Hello and welcome to Aviation This Week. The new directions in the aviation industry occasioned by the COVID-19 pandemic continues to attract global concerns as experts offer suggestions towards improving airline activities in the post-COVID-19 lockdown. This and more on this edition of the program. I am Bisi Adebayo. As usual, our background report on the global impact of COVID on the industry comes first.
There has been considerable return of air travel activities in the global aviation industry in the post-COVID-19 lockdown. Airline companies, which before now were grounded, are making a comeback to the skies. However, while airlines are returning to business, global airline body, the International Air Transport Association IATA, is still mindful about the safety of air travelers and airline operators. To this end, IATA has called for airport COVID-19 tests for all departing international passengers to replace the quarantines they blame for worsening the travel slump. During an online media briefing, the head of the association told journalists that rapid and affordable antigen tests that can be administered by non-medical staff are expected to become available in the coming weeks and should be rolled out under globally agreed standards.
We propose to have an alternative measure that would replace quarantine, which would be testing all passengers at before departure, and preferably at departure airport. So a systematic testing of all passengers at departure would guarantee that you fly people who are not infected by the virus or with the risk of being infected, which is very, very limited by the sensitivity of the test.
Airlines hammered by the pandemic are pressing governments to embrace alternatives to blanket travel restrictions that are still hampering the traffic recovery and now tightening again in Europe amid rising cases. With rapid antigen tests becoming available for as little as $7 each, IATA Director General said airlines will push for their use to be endorsed by the International Civil Aviation Organization.
Up to now, PCR tests are as they have the highest sensitivity. But recently, the improvement made by the industry with the antigen tests are absolutely tremendous. And now they reach a 97, 98 sensitivity, which from our point of view and from a statistical point of view is enough to guarantee that the risk to re-import the virus is minimized.
The global body believes production could be likely increased to millions per day and the test phased in between late October and the end of the year.
The rhythm of implementation will depend on two things. First of all, we have to agree on the standards, that where we are targeting the end of October, to agree on the standards within ICAO, standards being recognized by everybody, and then states will have to implement them. But they will have agreed on what has to be implemented, which is key, because these standards have to be recognized by both states, departure and destination. Otherwise, it doesn't work.
The IATA boss said a global agreement is needed to ensure pre-departure test results are uniformly accepted by the destination country.
It is clear that it will introduce another step in the passenger journey and at the airport. But we think, first of all, it's manageable. We have successfully managed a security check in which we control every passenger for every travel at the departure airport, and successfully. Normally, it should be governments which pay for that because it's a medical regulation and obligation that they put on the shoulders of passengers or airlines or everybody. And usually, when you put a medical obligation, according to international health regulation that has been issued by WHO, it's normally governments who pays.
Antigen tests are faster but generally more likely to miss positive cases of the virus than laboratory-based molecular diagnostic tests. Among companies marketing the new tests, German diagnostic specialist Jin plans to launch a COVID-19 antigen test that provides results in 15 minutes and could be deployed in airports or stadiums. From the global scene to Bangladesh in the Middle East, where hundreds of migrant workers gathered at ticketing offices to get flights to Saudi Arabia, only to find that they also need to get COVID-19 tests in order to go, even if they manage to secure a ticket. Both Bangladeshi and Saudi Airlines have resumed issuing tickets, and tens of thousands of migrant workers who returned for holidays amid the coronavirus pandemic are crowding the offices. Visas for many of these workers have expired, but those who still have valid visas are desperate to get back to work.
My flight is tomorrow at 12 noon, but now they are saying that I have to go to the airport with a COVID-19 test. I am not sure whether or not I will get the COVID-19 test report in this short time. Now I am rushing for the test. It just depends on my luck.
I live in Saudi Arabia and work in a hospital. I came for a vacation, but due to the lockdown, I am stranded. I could not go there now. I am waiting for a ticket, but I don't see any way I can get one. Who will help me? Who do I need to meet to get a ticket?
More than 2 million Bangladeshis work in Saudi Arabia, one of the largest sources of labor for the country. From Bangladesh to South Korea in Asia, where the country's flagship airline, Korean Air, has transformed 2 of its passenger aircraft into cargo carriers to boost recovery from losses caused by the COVID-19 pandemic. Asset-heavy airlines find it hard to make ends meet as flights have been cancelled during the pandemic. The airline industry has been one of the hardest hit sectors, earning little but enduring continued costs, like parking and maintenance fees. Korean Air says no flights mean no ticket sales.
Fewer tickets are being sold. Operating loss and poor cash flow are the biggest blow to our company.
Although travel has been reduced during the pandemic, consumption has not declined. Air shipping rates are up, providing a silver lining opportunity for airlines to earn an additional profit.
Impacted by the COVID-19 pandemic, converting passenger jets into cargo carriers puts more airplanes into use and helps generate additional revenue.
Aside from Korean Air, South Korean airline Asiana Airlines has also overhauled 3 of its passenger aircraft to transport cargoes. The conversions might not be enough to revive South Korea's struggling airline industry, which was brought to a standstill because of the pandemic. 70% of Korean Air's staff have been laid off since April. Asiana Airlines put its entire workforce on unpaid leave, and E-Star Jet says it will undergo massive layoffs in October after Jeju Air walked away from its offer to buy the smaller budget airline. And in Portugal, hours after Berlin added Lisbon to the list of destinations to which it warned against travel due to the coronavirus, German tourists arrive in the Portuguese capital, showing understanding for the measure. Most tourists are upbeat about Berlin's travel warning.
Ich denke, die Restriktionen machen Sinn.
I believe the restrictions make sense, especially in the international travel context. I believe it is possible. Of course, it creates a lot of problems with quarantine and so on, but it has to be.
Marcel Mora, another young German, said he will now pay even more attention and that he will get tested upon his return home.
I think the measures are definitely justified, but I had already booked the trip and it's okay for me to stay for a holiday. I will pay even more attention, and when I return home, I will have to get tested. If it is negative, I can go wander around outside. If not, I will have to go into quarantine for 2 weeks.
Wenn eben negativ ist, kann ich auch wieder draußen rumlaufen, ansonsten muss ich eben in Quarantäne für 2 Wochen.
Germany warns against travel to regions within the European Union where the rate of COVID-19 infections exceeds the level of 50 per 100,000 population in a week. The German Foreign Ministry have published the updates to its websites shortly after releasing the list of destinations.
On our interview segment, aviation experts and the president of the Aviation Roundtable and Safety Initiative, Dr. Gbenga Olowo, examines the aviation industry at 60, the gains, the losses, and the way forward for a more vibrant sector.
Nigeria's independence 60 years ago, I was barely 8 years. See how young I am. I've been part of aviation now for 47 years. 47. Private sector. We didn't quite get it clear. Should it be private sector driven or government? Lately, we realized that we need the private sector. Like I said, investment is a key element to national income. And when government only source of investment, major one is your crude oil, and you've not been adding value over the years. You export crude, you bring in refined. Other one is tax. Who is paying tax in Nigeria until lately? To boost the national income. Therefore, you find out that government businesses run down. Now, lately, we're beginning to recognize that we need the private sector. When I go into the US and I look around, what makes this country great? You just see small enterprises, small, medium-scale enterprises in their own right. You hardly hear of labor unions. If we face it right, if sincerity of purpose is there, Nigeria should be parading 100+ aircraft by 2-3 airlines by now. Nigeria Airways alone was servicing the entire Europe, US alone, servicing the South Atlantic, West Africa. It was the giant of Africa. Nigeria Airways, that was liquidated. We should have given back to another 2, plus Nigeria Airways. I've always called it flag carrier, because one airline is not enough for Nigeria. I don't want a private monopoly. I don't want a private monopoly. The private players right now must consolidate. What they're still doing is dog eat dog. Dog eat dog. That's what they are doing. They must consolidate to have at least 2 strong players. Get ready for the other flag carrier that is coming, and then we should have 3. And then Nigeria does not have a monopoly. Nigerians have choice. What does it take to establish an airline, for God's sake? What? 2015 to 2020. This is 5 years. So we need to take decisions that will be in the best interest of this nation. That in another 60, we may or we may not be here. When Nigeria is 100 years, 120, we may not be here. We must have a milestone that this is what we want our country to be. There's a Yoruba adage that says, you want to be a madman, and you use the whole life to prepare. Then when are you going to become mad? When are you going to go into the market? What does it take to plan? And give back to the carrier. And let the carrier go ahead and give us the pride that we are talking about.
Welcome back. Next is our special report and flashes of happenings in the aviation industry across the globe.
Qatar Airways has received a $1.95 billion lifeline from the Qatari government after losing over $1.8 billion due to the coronavirus pandemic. According to the airline's financial statement, the lifeline was provided to Qatar Airways after annual losses exceeded 50% of share capital and was later converted into new shares. Qatar Airways, which has slashed jobs and delayed new aircraft deliveries due to the pandemic, flagged in March that it will seek state support but had not disclosed the funding until now.
It is huge. You can already see that there is a lot of airlines that have folded. A lot of airlines have asked for state aid. They have asked for subsidies. So you can see there will be a lot of reduction in capacity. There will be a lot of bankruptcies. There will be a lot of job losses. There will be a lot of pain. And it is my duty to make the pain as little as possible. But I'm not doing anything other. But eventually, to save my company and the other thousands, I have to take a little bit of pain. But we will try to reduce that pain as much as possible, but we will do better than what other airlines have done.
The 2019-2020 financial year had been one of the most difficult in its nearly 3 decades history, with losses widening from a restricted $1.2 billion in the previous year. The airline saw revenue increase 6.5% to $13.6 million. Passengers carried rose 10% to $8.6 million. The true impact of the crisis on Qatar Airways is unclear as global lockdowns continue beyond this financial year end.
What I need to warn people that the industry will not be the same. Because, like in 2008, when we had the financial collapse, all the companies stopped their executives traveling first class. After this pandemic and the usefulness of doing conference calls, video calls, working from home, this will reduce business traffic, which is really the bread and butter of our industry. I hope that the impact will not be as bad as I expect. One thing I can tell you, you will pay more to travel.
Qatar Airways Group includes the airline's management of Qatar's international airport and other aviation assets. Several countries, including the United States, have stepped in to help airlines hammered by the coronavirus crisis that brought global travel to a near halt earlier this year. Foreign nationals holding valid Chinese resident permit for work, personal matters and reunion can enter China without applying for new visas. In view of the COVID-19 situation and the need for epidemic prevention and control, adjustments are now made to the announcements by the Ministry of Foreign Affairs and the National Immigration Administration on the temporary suspension of entry by foreign nationals holding valid Chinese visas or residence permits issued in March 2020. Holders of the above 3 categories of residence permit, which expired March 28th, may apply for relevant visas by presenting the expired residence permit and relevant materials to the Chinese embassies or consulates, on the condition that the purpose of the holder's visit to China remains unchanged. The Chinese government says it will continue with people-to-people exchanges in a step-by-step and orderly manner while ensuring effective epidemic control. Japan Airlines is in a move to swap ladies and gentlemen, a phrase typically used to address passengers, for gender-neutral greetings, following other global airlines in adopting more inclusive language for passengers. Attention all passengers and good morning everyone will be amongst the terms adopted for announcements at airports and on flights operated by the Japanese carrier, who will use the new forms to address from October the 1st. Several airlines around the world have made a similar change in recognition of non-binary and gender-sensitive customers. Air Canada and European low-cost carrier EasyJet said last year they will drop ladies and gentlemen. The announcement comes as gender equality advocates say that corporate support for LGBT plus rights is growing in socially conservative Japan, where same-sex marriage remains illegal and being openly gay seen as taboo. In March this year, Japan Airlines announced it will allow female flight attendants to wear trousers and ditch their high heels at work, following a feminist campaign that took off. Singapore Airlines has scrapped plans for flights to nowhere after an outcry over the environmental impact. With the aviation industry in crisis, several carriers in countries like Australia, Japan and Taiwan have been offering short flights that starts and end at the same airport to raise income. However, Singapore's flag carrier, which has grounded nearly all its planes and cut thousands of jobs, said it had ditched the idea following a review. Environmental activists had voiced opposition to Singapore Airlines' launch. Environmental activists had voiced opposition to Singapore Airlines launching flights to nowhere, with Group SG Climate Rally saying that they would encourage carbon-intensive travel for no good reason.
Pilots from the Tiger Club in the United Kingdom now benefit from spectacular views of the city and the River Thames. Sections of East London's airspace, normally open to planes taking off from and landing at London City Airport, are now available for the club's use.
Take off into wind. Right.
Anna Walker and her fellow pilots fly one of the club's two 1933 de Havilland Tiger Moth aircraft from an aerodrome in Upminster in the eastern London suburbs.
Normally, the whole of the London airspace around London City Airport and all the other London airports is very congested. But at the moment, there's hardly any traffic around, and so we are allowed to go fly over places we don't normally go to because it's too congested. I think our pilots are always looking for a new challenge and a new thrill, and this opportunity of flying over an airport is just another attraction, and it's a beautiful part of London as well. Fly along the Thames barrier, and just looking at the London skyline, it's just so magic. You can see Wembley from Surrey, and the visibility has been unbelievable. And there's no smog anywhere, and I fly all over the world, all over the country.
The combination of a rare opportunity and perfect condition means the Tiger Club will avail themselves of London open skies for as long as they are allowed. Now to the safety of cabin air, as airlines try to convince nervous travelers it's perfectly safe amid efforts to relaunch a grounded travel industry. Many believe that pressurized cabins only contain static or recycled air. In an office building, air is said to be exchanged about 4 times every hour. On a modern jet, it's up to 20 or 30 times. In most cases, compressed air is fed from the clean part of an engine to air conditioning parks. From there, it flows to fans in the cabin ceiling where it's dispersed downwards. Half of that is then recycled through filters designed to remove 99.9% of contaminants. Plane makers insist cabin air is renewed every 2 to 3 minutes. Scientists caution that in reality, air is always a blend, as air currents over short distances are hard to predict. Boeing and Airbus have deployed engineers to examine seat-to-seat airflows to better understand how to reduce the risk of in-flight transmission.
That's it on this edition of the program. Thank you for staying with us. As we celebrate Nigeria at 60, let's not forget to keep safe always. I am Bisi Adebayo. Bye for now.
Thank you.